All right, well, thank you. We'd like to welcome everyone. Appreciate you coming. This is kind of a unique opportunity for us as a state to have so many great partners convened in one place and to welcome Priceline here with us. That's a real honor and treat. We appreciate you making time to be here. My name is Aaron Starks. I'm our Chief Revenue Officer, Managing Director of Business Services at World Trade Center, Utah. We're a private organization that exists here in the state. Our whole mission is to grow companies. And so we do that through our networks, programs, and services, and feel grateful to share the state with so many wonderful partners and friends who are here in the audience with us. We appreciate those online as well, and hope this will be a great event for you. We're aware that in the great state of Utah here that there are many vibrant, robust sectors growing. Foremost among those has been technology, especially as we look at the past decade. So it necessitates a conversation about how we can not only help the tech community thrive here, but what we can do as an organization in the state to help them compete and win abroad. And so today's topic, many of the topics discussed will focus on those areas, how we can engage more with the tech community, many of which we've been able to help grow and direct their efforts abroad. At World Trade Center, Utah, we offer several services. We looked at the state's economy, knowing that it's going to continue growing and diversifying, and knowing that many of the clients here are starting to grow and international markets are becoming a consideration. We've decided to help with services like market selection, helping them choose markets that make sense so they're informed and confident in the process, helping them position themselves abroad to foreign audiences through defining their buyer personas, while also being able to complete a very comprehensive go-to-market strategy that overcomes regulatory and compliance hurdles. And then lastly, once those markets are selected, introducing them to buyers, partners, investors in foreign markets so they can grow. So we get to have a lot of fun, and we get to work in the greatest state here in the country. We're grateful for that. I'd like to thank Dorsey Whitney. Troy Keller's a tremendous partner and friend. Thank you for teeing this up for us, Troy. We appreciate our sponsors, Larry Miller, and our participating partners, Silicon Slopes, DOMO, Priceline, and Crestone Capital. And so with that being said, it's now my privilege to introduce our panelists and our great moderator. First, I'd like to introduce Brett Keller, CEO of Priceline. All of us know Priceline here in Utah.
Let's hope so.
We do. And a very great resource to us. Brett is the CEO of Priceline and joined the company in 1999 and has previously served as the COO and CMO prior to his appointment as CEO. So knows the company upside down, inside out. Has over 25 years of experience scaling global e-commerce businesses and has played a central role in growing Priceline's business and evolving the brand's product and go-to-market strategies for its diverse set of digital offerings. Brett managed Sendin's online travel at travel businesses as a director of online travel prior to his experience at Priceline, and he holds an MBA from Cornell's Johnston Graduate School of Management and an undergraduate degree in Japanese from Brigham Young University. So he knows Utah very well. And Japanese, I put him on the spot earlier prior to beginning. He answered perfectly. Sketchy. Next, I'd like to introduce Mark Johnston, CMO of DOMO. We all know DOMO and their tremendous billboard signs all along I-15.
They are mine.
You're doing a great job there, very memorable. Mark thrives at the intersection of technology, marketing, and business, and has a deep passion for tech evangelism, product management, and building highly impactful teams. Prior to DOMO, Mark held strategic marketing and commercial leadership roles at Microsoft, where he spent 14 years contributing to the successes of the company's most notable enterprise products, including Azure and Office 365. A native of the UK, Mark spends much of his free time exploring his new Utah surroundings with his wife and two sons. That's great to know. Appreciate you coming to Utah. It's a great place to be out in the mountains with your kids. And lastly, our tremendous moderator, Rachelle Morris, who also sits on the board of World Trade Center, Utah, and we're grateful for that. In her current role, she's the executive director of client advisory at Crestone Capital, and serves as a trusted advisor to ultra high net worth entrepreneurs and executives delivering the best solutions to meet clients and prospective clients' unique financial and personal objectives Prior to Crestone, she was a VP with JP Morgan Private Bank in Salt Lake City, Utah. Rachelle began her career at Goldman Sachs in its private wealth management division, spending her analyst and associate years in the Salt Lake City and Dallas offices and advancing to vice president in Houston. Rachelle received her Bachelor of Science in Information Systems from Brigham Young University. I'll just add in that this may be the one day, certainly this year, but in recent history where BYU and Utah fans can come together and root for the U. So we have a lot of BYU representation here. Lastly, as previously mentioned, Rachelle has been a longtime partner and friend to World Trade Center Utah. And we appreciate that. So without any further ado, Rachelle.
All right, thank you. Well, and Mark and Brett, thank you for spending your afternoon with us here in Utah. And just because I feel like I'm just an honorary member of the audience who gets to ask you most of the questions. And so just to get a feel for who's sitting with us, recognizing that half of our audience is joining us virtually, but how many of you are associated with a tech company here in Utah? Okay. And then how many of your companies have expanded into international markets? Okay, so about half the audience works in a tech company and half of those have already gone global as a tech company. Okay, so that gives us a good frame for who we're conversing in front of. I guess, question number one, as we think about the theme going global as a Utah tech company, when you have considered as an executive entering a new country or market, the first question from my perspective that comes to mind is business model fit. How do each of you think about your business model fit into foreign countries, and that strategy that you build out in making a decision around that?
First of all, thanks. It's great to have everybody here and all of you joining digitally. I only did this because I wanted to see my logo next to Dorsey and have that kind of brand carryover and buzz that Dorsey brings to it. So thanks, Troy, for making that happen for me.
Thanks for the plug.
Now that we got that out of the way, now we can really talk. Okay, so we know our business model fits anywhere in the world, right? Because everyone in the world is using a digital device to book travel. So that's never really been a challenge for us. In fact, we knew that, 20 years ago when we started, 25 years ago when we started the business. What's been interesting is in order to take a product outside of your home market, and for us, Priceline was a US business, we thought it would be quite easy to replicate the success we had in the US. We started with the UK. And so we essentially took a couple of executives from our business here and said, hey, replicate what we just did here in the UK. They speak English there. It's a great market, kind of
like English.
And so we sent the team over. They built a team very quickly, spent a tremendous amount of money, probably flushed $100 million in marketing and advertising, and it completely failed. So it never took off, never gained traction. I mean, they owned every tube station, wall to wall. They had a radio and TV ads running constantly. And I think a couple of things we learned from that. One is the product wasn't really ready for the UK market. And if you go out in advance with, all guns blazing on the marketing side, and you think you've got a great platform to promote, but the product isn't really tuned for the market, it clearly is going to fail, which it did in that construct. The second attempt was to partner with somebody from a market who we thought would be a great partner. So we actually partnered with Hutchison Whampoa in Asia, a very, very large scale, Asian player. And that petered along for probably, 10 years with literally no success. And we finally backed out of that and shut that down. So for us, the way to grow was organically, but in, I would call it micro steps. We would identify a marketplace. So let's take the UK. Before we stepped into the UK with any aggression, we made sure that we had a reasonable amount of hotel inventory that was available for consumers to book, that we had that supply available and on the shelf. And then we began to step into, very lightly, marketing channels to optimize and tune the ROIs to begin to scale that. And we had to balance the product evolution with the marketing. So as we found consumer demand for product that we didn't have, we then would funnel that data over to our product people who then had to go into market, negotiate with hotels, get the volumes that we needed to then support that, and then we could tune up that marketing spend. And so that balance of the right product with the marketing working in tandem is what essentially helped inside our holding company, Booking.com, which is a brand you probably have heard of, essentially scale in every single country in the entire world, except for China and Japan. And I think we'll talk about those two markets in a little while. But outside of those two markets, they have become a number one or number two brand almost everywhere in the world. Priceline has primarily focused on North America. So we've scaled in Canada. We have some business in South America, and we are also scaling in some of those markets now. But we're a little late in the cycle. You know, when you're 25 years into a mature category, it's much harder because you now have much bigger competitors with much deeper pockets and spend, and you're now competing against some of these markets. But we nonetheless are going to go chase it. So,
Well, and so it just a follow-up question on that, with Priceline maintaining its branding in North America, does that mean that William Shatner is also spokesperson for Priceline Canada and, Mexico, or is he just kind of a US novelty?
historically, he's been a U.S. novelty, but the Canadians know him even as well because he is Canadian. He's actually from Montreal, and so he has a lot of clout up there. He actually has a lot of clout in the UK as well, as we've learned. But he's primarily been a U.S. He also went to space, right?
Yeah.
Which is a big deal.
Yes,
He's
yeah.
91, if you didn't know that. And he didn't like the fact that people thought he was going to space because he was the oldest person to ever go. I think that offended him to some degree. And I asked him, sorry, I have to tell this. So I talked about 2 or 3 days before he went to space. And I said, well, what type of training did you have to actually do? And he said, I only had to learn how to do one thing. I said, okay, what did you learn how to do? How to put on the 5-point harness once I come out of free float. He said, because if you don't get the harness on, you're only up there for 2 minutes. And then the ship, starts to go back down. And if you're not in your seat with the harness tucked in, you could put yourself at great risk. He said, it's much harder than you think it is to get, and he's a little rotund too. So getting that harness in place. And he was noticeably very nervous about that. He clearly had a great trip and all went well. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, I don't know how to follow that. And thank you for having me. And I guess hopefully by my accent and the introduction, I'm the non-Utah person that's come to help explain how technology companies from Utah expand. So my background, I was in the European region, so I was based out of London, and I was the first marketer on the ground there, working with our sales leadership in the region. And probably like Priceline, DOMO is a B2B offering. We sell to companies, and we sell anywhere where there's data or decision or a business process, which means we can sell to anyone in a very similar way. And the opportunity that creates is vast, every small business up to every global enterprise. But the beauty of being a cloud platform and cloud technology is that actually our going international starts here in Utah, just naturally through just awareness and demand and just the technology ecosystem. We get customers, and whenever I joined DOMO about 4 years ago, and DOMO EMEA was probably 6-7 years old. In that first couple of years, it was all sold from here, and it was all kind of opened up. But then they started to place investments into the region, and to the business model question, when you sell to businesses, it's actually pretty easy to evaluate. If you're selling a cloud technology, it's how cloud mature is that market. If it's how well aligned is it to the technology that we build? So in Europe, very well aligned, as long as you're not selling into a regulated market. If you're selling into a regulated market in any kind of cloud way in Europe, you're kind of screwed unless you can get your technology into one of those regional kind of cloud platforms. Two, just competition dynamic. If we work in a very big sort of addressable market, which is business intelligence. Well, then you're competing with lots of big players, but in certain markets, you've got very strong local software vendors who do that. And Germany's, and we can probably come back to Germany in the Europe if we get to kind of talk about Europe. Germany's a very unique market, and you cannot kind of compete there without really understanding those local dynamics, both from a technology competitor perspective, but also from a partnering one. You cannot necessarily go direct. And then for DOMO, this kind of like was the symbol, was we went to the best English speaking markets first. We went to the Nordics and the Scandinavian countries, We got a very big customer in France, unusually, L'Oreal. And it just happened to be that the L'Oreal marketing organization was very sort of global and international in their perspective, so we were very easy to work with. But more and more we have to find local language people, so that talent's a big part of our evaluation criteria. And actually, DOMO in this kind of current phase is planning to kind of go pretty heavily into the Iberian market, again based on winning customers from here or with our UK team, and then figuring out there's actually a bigger market opportunity and influence there. And so the Iberian market being Spain and Portugal. So that was my kind of European experience coming here, and then figuring it out from a global perspective. Complexity just kicks in with scale for us, which is how do you serve many markets? We're very centralized execution. How do you serve many markets in many languages from the headquarter team? And so we make sure that we're not spending a load of time and energy here without that market opportunity.
Could I add one last thing? Because you brought up a couple of great points. One thing we've learned is you have to build your systems for scalability from the beginning, right? If you wait too long in the process, you can't unwind it. If you build for one market and everything is thought of as a one market product, it's very hard to then say, well, let's go do that in another market. But if you're thinking at the beginning of your product development cycles, say, hey, I want this product to work in French, and I want it to work in Japanese, and it needs to work with these currency types. It needs to work in all of these facets. As you begin to put in your infrastructure and your systems, you can build something that can scale with that. So for example, for our companies, we had to put in place systems that could address a French consumer who was booking a hotel in Germany, right? And so you now have three different issues. You have to have a site that supports French, but they have to understand how to book a hotel in another country that clearly we have content coming in from those hotels, which is in German, which has to be then translated to French. And then we need to make sure that that translates correctly and that the consumer can actually navigate that process, understand what they're booking, how they're booking it. And so you've got these databases underneath that have to identify, okay, who's the booker, what's their booker country, what's their booker destination, and pull in all of the right content to then support that on the front end user experience. And to do that really well, you really have to have people who know how to set that structure up from the beginning. Otherwise, you're going to be kicking yourself again and again and again as you move down the road trying to service customers in these markets, because it gets really complicated very quickly. And that's happened to Priceline. We got ourselves pinned in there. It's very hard to then break out of it because all your systems are based on one customer profile and one experience. Whereas some of our sister companies learned that from the beginning, built correctly, and now can literally light up any country, any market, and then do business there effectively. So.
Well, okay. And so thinking about, building out system of scale, but then also probably the right kinds of teams to build out as you enter each market. Who are your first hires, as you consider entering a new country?
Well, if it's so we look at outside countries through two lenses, right? One is, are we trying to go out and just build an operating base in order to bring in new talent that's cost effective, that would be, highly effective for our business to scale with a new just set of operating employees. The second would be to go in as a B2C business and try to actually launch a business there. So if it was the B2C side, I think we would likely be hiring product specialists in the marketplace first. So, because if you have all of your engineering teams locally, they can build the product. What they don't have typically is the expertise to understand what the user experience should look like and what are some of the pitfalls that consumers are going to have if they go through the US experience down there, where down there is. And so we would probably look for product people first,
Okay.
who could come in and tell us, here's how you need to think about this market. Here's how your product should be constructed. They know what the competition is doing and can speak very intelligently about how to do that. From there would be marketing second, just to scale locally in the market.
I think, in the world of B2B and SaaS, the first hire is always the sales rep, that the first person on the ground that can sell. And I think it's probably more interesting is like who you first hire versus the role. Typically that first hire is someone that's coming from your competitor or someone that's got has got a track record in Europe of growing other software companies. So DOMO's current chief revenue officer, actually now just been announced as the president internationally. He went back to the UK, a guy called Ian Tickle. Ian was my boss in Europe, and he had previous history with Josh James, the CEO of DOMO from Omniture, and he was hired because he had two really key attributes. He had a great LinkedIn list or Rolodex of people to go phone up and sell, because if you're opening up in a market, you need to get your first reference wins, and Ian was very well connected into that sort of enterprise software buyer market. So three things: he knew lots of reps that he could that would come with him. And then, three, he knew how to grow. He was a great general manager and knew how to grow a subsidiary or region of a software sales organization. So, the Ians of the world, or the Pete Stegels, or the Tom Kawasaki's in the different regions that we have, they're the key people that we land with first. And now that you get those regional, so the way DOMO set up is we have North America, we have LATAM, which is running a partner business model. And then we have APAC, Japan, and EMEA. And those general managers are the first hires. But now that's the scale. EMEA is really interesting. Now they're starting to create those sort of regional leaders for those different sub-country markets. So the cycle repeats itself. So we're now placing a guy called Amir into the Iberian market, and he's trying to find those first reps, those first customer success managers. The last thing you hire is people like me, because you don't need to hire people like me, just until you run out of quota and you run out of pipeline that you can find yourself through your network. And that network effect continues to happen. So if you're in a B2B business model, it's pretty straightforward, people heavy. You don't need an office. You need a phone number and an office and or WeWork and a guy called Ian to get going.
And I do agree, whether it's B2C or B2B, however you're operating, whoever your lead competitors are, go pick off a couple of their top players, spend up, get them in, because you buy so much expertise that would take years for people to really gather themselves on the ground.
And then do you send someone from headquarters to partner with the really good salesperson, but who doesn't have I've experienced this in making the move just from one, company to another here in the US, that sure, I can be the face of the franchise, but I don't have the history of what we did 7 years ago as an institution.
Kind of be controversial. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Not in customer facing roles. So I spent 14 years at Microsoft, so it was a huge organization. And a lot of North America sort of leadership comes in. The ones that succeed, sorry, it's not a no, it's just it's not as straightforward. Headquarter people that come over are really great in delivery roles or technology roles, because they know all of the kind of stuff to do with the technology that the customers need. I've seen a lot of US people come on those tour of duties to the UK or to Europe or whatever. And the ones that naturalize and become very like the local region succeed. The ones that bring their sort of normal, and this isn't like a North American thing, it's actually just a corporate headquarter function to a region thing. They don't adapt. It's more tactical in the regions, and it's more nuanced in style.
Interesting. Cool. Well, should we go on a little tour around the world?
Sure.
All right. Well, we haven't talked about India yet. Let's talk about India. Are your companies in India? What was the process? How do you approach that marketplace? And, recognizing that is a country that is going to have the largest population in the very near future.
So we have approached it in two ways. One is obviously to just launch businesses in India to go after the consumer base who are traveling in that market. And several of our brands within the group have moved in there, and we have okay market share in India. It's been one of the harder markets though, because one, the average purchase price of a product is so low, it's hard to actually make enough profit to then turn back into your marketing engine to build your pipeline of consumers. And that's typically how we've entered markets to compete, is we go into, essentially, we use Google or what we call meta search engines. Domestically, you know that as a Kayak or a TripAdvisor, et cetera. But the average transaction size is so small there, there's just not much profit to use to then spin back into your marketing machine. And so we're competing with some local players there who have just grown brand awareness through, dumb money that's invested in brand spend and has grown, a reasonable source of business there. But there's not enough profitability or size there yet to make it a market of extreme interest, right? So it's not on the top of our go attack list. What we have done in India, though, is to build up a team. And the intention there was really just to go after tech talent. We are based in the New York and Norwalk areas there in Connecticut, and have found over the last 3 or 4 years especially that our average salaries have increased so much. And even within the last 2 or 3 months, our average tech salaries have gone up almost 15 to 20% because of the compression that's happening in that marketplace. It's really countrywide, but especially in the New York area, we're getting poached by the Amazons and the Googles who have large entrenchments there. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we decided we need to find a new base of operation to bring in really nice tech talent, product talent, especially, and some analysts. And we looked at Mumbai as one of our options because a reasonable percent of our tech population in the New York area is Indian. And so we said, hey, we've got some ties there. So we looked at the Indian marketplace and tapped Mumbai as one of the spaces we wanted to grow in. And we started an office there, and we've now scaled that up. We've got a couple of hundred engineers and product people there. So some key things that we've learned there over the last 3 or 4 years, that I wish I would have known at the start, is one, hire a very strong, seasoned local leader. We tried to do it from the ground up and not really have a leader in place, like we call an office leader, but really they're a technical VP level leader. I wish we'd have hired that person first, not 2 or 3 years in. Second is to build fully functional teams as opposed to individuals that rely on teams back in the US to get their work done. So if we staff a team there now, we want to put in, 3 or 4 technologists, a product person, a technical program manager, so that they're an independent and functioning team that can do full deploys from Mumbai into our product stack. So they're not reliant on people in the US to get the deploy pushed, to do QA and testing, to wait for assignments and things to work on. And then they're very motivated to work harder because they feel like they're contributing their ideas from Mumbai. That's the second thing that we've done. The third is we treat them like they are any other employee at Priceline here in the United States, right? Same benefits. They get the same communication flow. They have access to all of the same, things that we do in the US for our employees here. They have that same access so that they feel like they are 100% part of our team and not an adjunct office that we've, put in place just because we want to get cheap talent and can, milk that for whatever that's worth. If that were our approach, it would not be successful. The approach we've taken now, though, with the right leadership, with how we treat people and how we structure the teams, it's a very, very good option for us. And the salaries are literally a third of what we're paying in the New York area. So it's been very cost effective and also really exceptional talent there. Just very smart, very capable people.
And I know from my experience in the financial services sector in India that attrition was the #1 problem with, at least for Goldman and JP Morgan, with talent.
So attrition hasn't been our problem, but I'll tell you what our problem is when you make an offer to a candidate in India, they have 3 months to leave their current role. So you've got to wait 3 months. At least 30 to 40% of those people at the end of the 3 months will come back and say, actually, I'm not coming. And so you've waited 3 months with an open role. You think you have someone about to join and they'll go, yeah, I'm staying here. Because the employers there know that an offer's been made. They have 3 months to kind of coach, talk to, give them more responsibility and pay them. So you have to take that into account in your hiring. You basically need to hire twice as many people as you think you need to, because by the time you're done, you'll end up with the right amount of people.
Can you clarify that? Is that government mandated or is that cultural?
It's government mandated.
It is.
Yeah.
So
Now
similar to what happens in Europe with regards to firing people or doing layoffs, where you have this up to 6 months, you have to give notice, right? Interesting.
Yeah, it's not on the layoff side, it's not quite that bad there, but on the hiring side,
Crazy.
Yeah, you have to wait. And we've been burned so many times thinking we've got this staff, it's about to enter the company. And then we have people who come in and then 3 days later quit. They go right back to their jobs that they were just at. And so it's really a strange dynamic. So we've tried to do things like increase sign-on bonuses materially, but they have to be there for at least 2 months before they get the sign-on bonus, right? So we're trying to work around some of these dynamics that mess with our typical flow and cadence that we have here in the US, which is nothing like that hiring process.
Crazy.
In India, we probably a little bit, like our average selling price is probably higher than the market is sort of interested in getting involved with or purchasing us. So we don't typically sort of go to market there. Like we do a lot of like optimization because there's a lot of interest in kind of modern cloud technologies like Domo, but it doesn't typically perform very well. The kind of core area for us that's kind of interesting is just the offshore volume of people that work there for many other companies around the world is really influential. So our APAC region is very much set up for sales. They care about India, but they also kind of own the responsibility for enabling and recruiting partners in that region. Because if we don't, and the example I remember is we were selling into a large car manufacturer from Germany. Everyone was very excited on the commercial side. We were going to help them with some sort of business use case, but we got blocked because the delivery team that would have been partnering with us had no skills in our technology. So we had to go, and I believe it was either Wipro or Deloitte or somebody, and we had to go into region and go into India and actually train up their data analysts, their data engineers, their IT folk, because if we hadn't, we wouldn't have been able to fulfill that customer. So India for us as an enterprise software company is really is an influencer in our ability to sell into those global enterprises. It just becomes a blocker if you don't have good engagement. Interestingly, I think it becomes an opportunity because they travel, they go to other markets, they go to other clients, and therefore by investing in skilling them, we're effectively creating a little bit of an influence on other customers and lead gen for the future. So it will pay off just beyond just the tactical block and tackling of working in big enterprise global organizations.
Yeah, no, very interesting. Let's see, I'm conscious of the time too. And I know Ray Dalio got in some hot water the other day with his remarks on CNBC, but I feel like we do need to talk about China a little bit. And everyone starts rolling their eyes. So, how have your companies explored doing business in China?
We haven't.
You stayed away.
I'll cover off the easy angle. Yeah. I'll kind of give the simple reason why. When you're an enterprise software company that builds on a major hyper cloud infrastructure like Amazon or Microsoft or Google, you kind of need that infrastructure to be there to really go into a market at scale. If you're in China, you need to be on Huawei, Tencent, Alibaba, and they own 80% of the cloud infrastructure market. So we have customers there. Like Hong Kong is an area that we have customers. But you need that infrastructure support to do that. We can connect to the data, but you can't sit on it.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't.
Well, listen, for us, it's a huge travel market, as you can imagine. If you look at the travel industry worldwide, it's about a $3 trillion industry. China is the second biggest market, only behind the United States, but soon will eclipse that and will become larger than the United States in terms of total travel sales taking place in that country. They love, the Chinese love to travel, both domestically and internationally. And so we've always looked at the market as a place for us to get those international travelers. So people leaving China to travel somewhere else in the world, because we have tremendous hotel supply worldwide. And so if they're looking for hotels in the European area, if they're coming to Miami, wherever it is those travelers are coming, we've got exceptional supply. So we thought we'll run the same model there that we've run in every other country in the world. We've got the supply. We'll go into major search channels like US would be Google, and we will buy keywords, spend money, drive consumers to these landing pages and sell them on this product. And it just has not worked. And we've been at it for 10 years. And so we've tried different approaches. A lot of the consumers there, as you know, do everything inside of major applications as opposed to through search engines like the US consumers do. And so they like fully enclosed operating platforms where they do everything in their life, from their dry cleaning to booking travel to ordering food. We weren't necessarily integrated into those systems, and so didn't really ever get that kind of scale. We built products to try and go do that, and they just didn't work that well. And so we have never really gained any significant share there. So we tried a couple of other things. We partnered with several of the largest travel companies in China who were endemic to China, and did so in several ways. We put major investments into those companies, as well as tried to do some partnership with them where we would cross-share supply, where we said, hey, we want to get the consumers that you were currently bringing into your platform. So we'll open up our international supply, meaning our hotel inventory. And if you can open up your domestic inventory to our consumers, we'll kind of share it. So if we send Europeans to China, they'll book your inventory. And if you send Chinese outside of the continent, they'll book ours. And this was a very attractive proposition to these Chinese travel companies because they didn't have very good supply outside of domestic China. Well, what we learned is they only wanted to make that relationship because they wanted to know what hotels their customers were booking, so they could then approach the hotel themselves and say, I hear you're getting a 15% commission. You're paying Booking.com or the Priceline group a 15% commission on hotels. I'll do it for 10, right? And so they come in, undercut us, create a direct relationship, and all of a sudden they stop selling that hotel on our platform and keep selling all the others. So we learned obviously pretty quickly that wasn't going to be a great way to enter the market. And so we had to deal with that type of a relationship. So you've got to understand what you're trying to accomplish in the market, what the right channels are to go in, and just realize it's extremely, extremely hard. There are very few US companies who've ever truly become successful in that market.
So is that a rule of law thing for China?
Meaning,
contract law is pretty straightforward in the US. But it sounds like it may not be as such in China.
on that last issue I just shared,
Yes.
well, there's nothing really illegal about that, right? There's nothing illegal about that. We could have written that into the contract to say you absolutely cannot speak to these hotels. They wouldn't have ever gone for that. So
So it's a cultural.
it's a cultural thing.
You find that other places like in India?
We have, yes. We've even found that with partners in the US. It's not just about China, but the difference is they have such scale, and the number of people and investment that they're putting into building their products. They don't want to be landlocked to China, right? You've heard of a company called Ctrip, which is one of the biggest travel companies in the world outside of the ones you may know of here in the US. And they have every aspiration to be a worldwide dominant global travel player. So their play is become number one in China, which they have, and then begin to move into other markets and expand.
Well, let's open it up to the audience. Does anyone have any burning questions?
I want to, Brett. So you said your satellite office is in Mumbai.
Yeah.
Have you considered going into Bangalore too?
We did, when we first looked at the marketplace, that was an obvious choice just because of the strong technical talent that's there. We had people in our company who had ties to Mumbai. And so we naturally fell into that in the beginning and have found an exceptional amount of talent in that marketplace. And now with COVID, to be honest with you, we're hiring people all over India. They're all working remotely anyway, so it almost doesn't matter what market you choose at this point. And when COVID hit there, most of the folks in Mumbai moved out back into the countryside to live with their family, and they haven't returned. So I'm not sure that we'll ever get them back into offices, but they're doing exceptionally well from remote villages and towns all over India. Yeah.
What are all the places that you actually have offices? And like, are there any that you maybe opened and then you look back at that with some regret, or any lessons learned from deciding where you put your foreign offices besides what you talked about with Mumbai?
Sure. So I'll speak specifically to Priceline. Booking Holdings has offices literally everywhere.
Yeah.
Priceline, we have offices in New York and Connecticut, Toronto, which is a relatively new office. It's only maybe 3 years old. Winnipeg, Canada, which was through an acquisition. That's maybe 15 years old. We have a small one in Berlin and then a large one in Mumbai. We don't regret any of the offices that we opened. We find excellent talent in Canada. In Winnipeg, there just isn't very much talent. So we haven't looked at that as a hiring hub. Toronto is one of the fastest and hottest technical hubs in really the North America today. And we felt the timing was right for us a couple of years ago. We were just ahead of that and have found really, really good talent in Toronto, and underpriced from what we pay in New York. It's probably, 15 to 20% less expensive than what we pay in the New York area. Mumbai is awesome. We love the business now. It's a scale, and once you get to scale, it just makes it so much easier to recruit, to retain, to build culture, and do those things in that marketplace. So we're pretty happy with our offices.
American Fork, Utah, you might see the billboards.
So
Um,
love, right?
very
So
good.
love.
I love them. I actually enjoyed seeing them, the drive-in. So we've got offices in London, Tokyo, Sydney, Singapore. We're opening offices in Madrid and a couple of other places that I can't quite remember. So we a technology company, and it's kind of if you want to go and put sales and marketing and customer success and like delivery, you've got to go to the tech centers. And that kind of obviously, right, like from where I'm from, like you have to go to London if you really want to be successful, which means you pay a massive premium for salaries right now, because every other hyperscaler is there. There's such a big tech ecosystem. It's just but you have to do it if you want the best talent. And salespeople, I'll give you a scary example. We hired a sales rep, a business development rep for £50,000. He lasted 6 months and doubled his salary going out to, and that was before he got commission, doubled the salary going to Salesforce. So there's a peril to the big tech hub kind of center.
I would almost not even, like if I was a small business or a business that was really trying to build great tech and product talent now, I wouldn't even worry about an office anymore. I'm just, wherever I can find them, I would hire them. They were reasonably, priced. I'd stay out of the big tech hubs in, California and the New York area, and just go full remote. We're essentially there anyway as a company now, and we'll probably stay there mostly. We like offices for a few reasons, but we're not in any of them at the moment. So we've been operating that way for almost 2 years.
What characteristics would discourage you from activating in a specific market?
Regulation has certainly been a problem in some markets. So if there's, very oppressive data privacy laws in place, taxation issues, those types of things have certainly been a problem for us. You've heard of the digital services taxes that have kind of come up in the past couple of years across Europe. Those are a royal pain for a US company, because basically we can't compete fairly with European companies inside their home countries. So for example, if you take a country like France, there are a number of endemic, hotel chains and travel agencies in that marketplace who would not have to pay the digital services tax. We come from outside of France, come into the marketplace and sell a product to a consumer. We have to pay the digital service tax. And it's not on the EBITDA or the bottom line, it's on the revenue, which makes it that much more expensive for us to operate. And because it's on the revenue, we can't afford to actually market the product in a competitive environment, because these other players don't have to pay that. And so they basically it's like a 15% premium bonus if you're in the country. Now, of course, the local government would say, that's exactly what we want to happen. We want to, have this inure to the benefit of our local companies. Troy actually set me up with Senator Lee down in Washington about 2 years ago to sit down and talk about this issue with him. I said, this is a real issue. I said, are you familiar with this? He said, I haven't heard about this at all. He said, that seems completely unfair and not something that we would put up with as a country. I said, I agree. What can you do about it? So since that time, and it's not because of me speaking to Senator Lee, but because I think the US Senate has become more aware of these digital services taxes, right? They're now saying, we're not going to put up with that. So they started taxing, French wine and cheese to just say, you do that to my tech companies, I'm doing that to your wine and cheese, which is not really a solution. So we are perfectly happy paying tax as long as it's fair for everyone who is in the marketplace, because we can't compete if we have this premium attached to our business, and it hurts consumers. Our product's better, honestly, than any other OTA, online travel agency in France, and our prices will be lower for the consumer. So it just hurts the consumer. French government doesn't really think about it that way. So, but I think those things will be solved with a kind of a pan-European digital services tax at some point. But as Troy told me earlier today, Europeans can do it well in the end. It just takes them 20 years to get there. So we'll see what happens. So that would dissuade me, from going to the market. Any thoughts on that one?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With your teams working remotely and being global, what are you purposely doing to build culture and a sense of unity in your teams?
Look at that first.
Yes. So we the only downside from a culture point of view is I haven't seen some people that I've hired and met. So you lose that opportunity to build like true kind of relationships. I was going like go for a beer type relationships with people. The way we kind of countered it is, our frequency of communication's gone up significantly with those teams, like ad hoc, so social or informal communications digitally. So we were probably global marketing organization, global sort of technology company. The regional teams would be pretty independent, and then they would come over for their kind of quarterly trips or every 6 to 10 weeks. You would do a lot of work together, and then they would go off and they would do their own thing.
Do they use Priceline to book their trips?
If they wanted to get a good deal, they certainly would.
Depends on the analytics that Priceline uses. So we talk about
On a Divvy corporate card, and what are some other tech companies?
Yeah, that's good. And so we lost that kind of physical connection. We replaced it with more frequent communications. But the opportunity, kind of like you don't have to have an office. Our international teams are now doing global projects, so we're now working much more as an integrated team to do things rather than just say the regional teams are the regions and we're the corporate function that does it. That's really helped just change. Like people now work with each other and know each other better based on what they're working on. As a British person that moved to the United States of America and then got stuck here for 2 years. Travel bans are really hard to deal with. Speaking personally, because I've seen my parents for 2 years. Going back next week, so it's fine. But then the ability to come back, that's going to be a real game changer for us. So although COVID doesn't change the working environment, having that physical connection is really important, I think, for culture.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll absolutely be reliant on travel as well. I've been dying to get to our Mumbai office. I mean, it's tripled in size since COVID started. I can't get there to meet the people in person. And so we keep bumping trips that we want to take to get there. But specific things we've done as a CEO, I've dramatically stepped up communication flow, and we do all hands on screen every 2 weeks. And we basically share everything about what's happening within the company, the results of the business, new projects that we're working on, new hires, celebrating tenure, all of those things. And every office is treated the same. We hold it very early in the morning on the East Coast so that our folks in Mumbai don't feel like they have to stay up till 11 p.m. at night to join a call. That makes a big difference, right? If they feel like they're always the ones who are thought of last, that's how you perform and behave in your culture. Other things we've done, again, is any new benefit feature that we roll out, it goes to everybody, not just people in the US or in the North American environment. And finally, I would say that the teams are just naturally very good at building, tight relationships with each other. And so we just obviously have used a lot of modern communications tools to make sure that that's happening.
And Mark, how many people are working at the office down in American Fork these days on a percentage basis?
Great question. So there's 3 buildings in American Fork. So I'm only in one of the buildings. I would say 40% on those kind of busier days, which are typically Mondays, Wednesdays maybe, but 40%. Yeah, I can't comment on the engineering building where a lot of the devs sit, and I can't comment on the client success teams. I haven't been in those buildings.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Last question.
Real granular specifics about worldwide communications. Teams, Google Meet, Zoom, what are you using? Are you using Slack, or what are you doing as far as staying in touch and communicating?
So we have used, I personally had experience with all of those platforms. We chose Zoom 4 years ago, and we are so happy
Do you buy stock in Zoom as well?
I should have. My pre-pandemic buy did not happen. And I'm exceptionally happy that we chose that. Booking.com was using Microsoft products. And every time we use those products on a worldwide basis, we break, not thrilled. But we always have issues and challenges with those. So Zoom and then Slack is by far the #1 communication tool the company uses.
And for Domo?
As a 14-year Microsoft veteran, so we use.
That stock has also performed very
Yeah,
well
I
during
know.
the pandemic.
Don't ask me how much my wedding cost, how much the stock I sold.
Oh.
years ago.
Is the company using?
No, sorry, Zoom and Slack are exactly the same. So,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
so,
choices.
yeah, no, we're good. I got over my addiction to Microsoft. So yeah, Zoom and Slack works really well like that, like Slack in particular. That is asynchronous communication is so important, especially as time zone and location and meetings.
Yeah, definitely. Hugely important for our international teams to connect with us here. Slack is awesome.
Well, I know we didn't get a chance to talk about, Latin America and Europe in detail, or Africa or Australia, but in the interest of time, we'll wrap up the conversation. And if anyone wants to come and have a sidebar conversation, by all means. But really, Brett and Mark, thank you
Yeah,
for
thanks everybody
for coming out.
Yeah, thank you.
You said you didn't go into Japan as well as China?
We tried, and we've done a little bit better in Japan. Also very challenging. The Japanese culture, isn't prone to adopt outside products nearly as quickly as literally every other market in the world. So, clearly it's not a Japanese brand. It doesn't even feel Japanese when you come into the experience. I'm talking about Booking.com primarily. And so it hasn't worked quite as well. But we did buy a very large travel company in Thailand. They've been more successful at moving into Japan just because roots in Southeast Asia, they've just the product experience feels more akin to what someone would use in Southeast Asia. Okay, thanks.
Like to shoot us too.
It's my Priceline Blue.